They say the Carpathian woods hold secrets older than time itself, where fog never lives, where even animals avoid the silence, and where shadows move when no one's watching. Hidden deep in those cursed forests is something the world has nearly forgotten. A creature born of fear, fed by storms, and feared even by the dead. Not a vampire, not a werewolf, but something caught between the two and darker than both. A being that doesn't just haunt the night, it consumes it. They call it Vârcolac. Welcome to Scary Drac, the place where ancient myths crawl back from the grave and folklore breathes again in the dark. If you're drawn to the stories the world tried to bury, monsters, curses, and the truth behind the legends, like this video, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you never miss a tale that was meant to be told. The Vârcolac isn't easy to define. It's not a single creature but a shadow in many forms. In some stories, it rises from the grave. In others, it sleeps between realms, feasting on the moon and devouring starlight. But all agrees, when the Vârcolac is near, light fades and the sky watches in silence. Long before Dracula, before the crossbow pierced the vampire's heart, before silver bullet ever touched fur, there was the Vârcolac. Its name is ancient, older than books, older than borders, passed down through whispers in the dark. In Romanian folklore is not a name you say after nightfall, because the Vârcolac might hear you. The first mention of the Vârcolac came not from fairy tales, but from fear. In the earliest oral tradition of folklore Carpathians, the Vârcolac was not just a beast, he was a cosmic terror, one that could devour the sun or moon during an eclipse. Pleasant believed that when the moon disappeared behind shadow, it wasn't a natural event, it was the Vârcolac chewing the sky. But what is it? Some say it was a wolf that betrayed the gods and was cursed to roam the heavens, hungering for light. Others claim it is a dead soul unable to pass on, so full of rage that it rises in the sky during eclipses to blot out the stars. And in some forgotten manuscripts is described as something far darker, a creature born when a werewolf and a vampire are buried in the same grave, an unnatural fusion, a tear in the balance of nature. The result, a beast that doesn't just hunt flesh, it devours time and memory. Across rural Romania, every eclipse was seen as an omen. In villages hidden deep within the hills, people would burn bundles of dry wormwood, garlic and ash. Mothers will keep newborns indoors. Dogs will howl uncontrollably or vanish altogether, and the elders will mutter an old warning. Do not look at the moon, the Vârcolac is hungry. But the story doesn't stop there. The word Vârcolac may come from the ancient Slovakic term Vârcolac, meaning wolf's hair, but in Romanian belief it grew into something far more terrifying. He is not bound by flesh, he can cross words, enter dreams, bend light. Some legends say it's the reason the moon goes red, because the Vârcolac doesn't just consume it, it bleeds it out. The Orthodox Church tried to suppress the myth. They labeled a relic of pagan superstition, but others never stopped believing, because sometimes the sky will still darken unexpectedly. And when it did, children will go missing, livestock will be found mutilated, men will return from the forest without their minds. Some scholars today try to explain it all away. Mass hysteria, they say, a myth created to explain lunar eclipses, but they weren't there. They didn't feel the silence before the howl. They never looked up during a total eclipse and saw a shape moving across the moon. The truth, we don't fully know what the Vârcolac is, only that it's not gone. And in Romania, when the moon starts to disappear, they still tell their children, don't look up. But what is the Vârcolac? You can't trap it in a coffin, you can't shoot it with silver, and you can't outrun it because it's not chasing you in the way you'd expect. The Vârcolac isn't a beast that howls at the moon. It becomes the reason the moon howls. But why is the Vârcolac? To answer that, you need to forget everything you think you know about monsters. In most folklore, monsters are born from curses, from infection, from ritual. The Vârcolac is formed when balance itself is shattered. Some say it's created when someone dies an unnatural death, violent, forgotten and without a funeral. Others claim it rises when a werewolf and a vampire are buried side by side, their hatred festering, fusing into something cosmic. A third, more terrifying belief? The Vârcolac is not of this earth at all. It is a tear in the veil, a living, one between realms, a reflection of a human fear crawling into our world when we forget to fear the dark. Descriptions vary across Romanian regions, but one detail always repeats. It is not bound by flesh. It can appear in a massive wolf, with burning red eyes, a black shadow with claws that ripple like smoke, or even a twisted decoying humanoid shape, part animal, part man, part something else, but its true form is said to be celestial. A shape of darkness coiled around the sky, glaring at the stars, swallowing the moon, drifting like ash between dimensions. Like vampires, the Vârcolac does not thirst for blood. Unlike werewolf, it does not crave for flesh. It feeds on light. It consumes celestial's energy, the warmth of fire, the glow of stars, the pull of the moon. In some stories, it can darken an entire region, turning day into dark, and leaving whole villages blind and freezing until the sun rises again. And it doesn't kill because it must. It kills because it is the absence of life. One haunting detail stands out in nearly every tale. The Vârcolac does not walk like man or beast. It floats in a shadow between the ground and sky. If you see it in the forest, it won't chase you. It will wait, because you won't escape the Vârcolac by running. You escape it by never noticing it was there. In villages, the signs of its presence were clear. A moon that fades too fast, shadow that stretch against the light, and in the worst case is a complete eclipse with no warning, no science, just an overwhelming silence that feels like the breath being held by the sky itself. And when the silence is broken, you are already too late. So, what is the Vârcolac? It's a nightmare, a child of shadow and storm, a beast that doesn't hunt the body. It devours the world around you. In the remote hills and dense forests of Romania, the fear of the Vârcolac was more than just a myth, whispered around campfires. It was woven into the daily lives of villagers, a presence felt in every shadow, every creak of wood at night, and every unexplained silence in the dark. For generations, the people of rural Romania lived in the belief that the Vârcolac was not just a beast of folklore, but a real and dangerous force that could strike from the sky and walk among them in secret. The most terrifying aspect of the Vârcolac wasn't always what it was, but what it could become. The legend said the Vârcolac had the power to devour the sun and the moon, causing solar and lunar eclipses. When the sky darkened unexpectedly, entire villages would erupt in panic. Men, women and children would pour into the streets, banging pots, ringing bells and shouting prayers into the sky. They believed the noise will drive the creature away before it swallowed the lie completely. It was a desperate act, but one born of belief that the fate of the world depends on their action in the moment. Yet not all Vârcolaci were cosmic beasts. Some were far more intimate and far more frightening. In many parts of Romania, people believed the Vârcolac would be created from the soul of the dead. Someone who had died tragically, or who was buried improperly, or cursed at the time of death, could return as one of these creatures. They didn't just rise from the grave, they could slip into your dreams, steal your breath, or possess your body. A neighbor who suddenly fell ill, a child who spoke in strange voices, or an animal found dead in the morning, all could be a sign that Vârcolac was near. This fear transformed everyday life. Certain people were watched with suspicion. The outcast, the orphan, the stranger who didn't speak much. Some carried the curse inside them, and once the suspicion took root, it rarely left. Even sleep was no longer safe. The Vârcolac was believed to have the power to attack through dreams, pulling your spirit out of your body while you're sleeping. People who suffer from sleep paralysis, nightmares, or sudden illness were often said to be victims of the creature's hunger. To protect themselves, villagers developed complex rituals. Garlic was hung above doorways. Iron objects were placed under the pillows. Animals were marked with protective symbols. Doors were locked not just with the key, but with prayers. Every shadow was a potential doorway. Every gust of wind, a warning. Funerals were conducted with extreme care. The body had to be washed properly, prayers recited correctly, and burial performed in sacred ground. If anything went wrong, the soul of the deceased could transform and return. In some cases, bodies suspected of turning into a Vârcolac were dug up, staked, or even burned. These weren't just superstitions, they were acts of community defense. What made the fear so enduring was how close it felt. The Vârcolac didn't come from wild, it could come from within, from family, from neighbors, even from oneself. There were stories of people who awake, covered in scratches they couldn't explain, of cattle drained of blood, of children speaking languages they never learned, of faces seen at the window, too pale to be human, too quiet to be safe. The line between the natural and the supernatural was within that Vârcolac lived in the fragile space. It was never fully visible, never fully understood, and that made it all the more terrifying. And yet, through all this fear, life continued. The fear became culture, their ritual became tradition, and their stories, passed from parent to child, kept the legend alive. To outsiders, these tales may sound like more folklore, but for those who grew up in the shadow of the forest, or in a house where the floor cracked too often after midnight, the fear of the Vârcolac was real. It wasn't just a creature, it was a warning, a reminder that when even safety of your home beneath the moonlight sky, something ancient still watches, still waits, still hungers. When most people think of monsters, they think of hunger, for blood, for flesh, for control. The vampire stalks the night in search of victims to drain. The werewolf transforms with the moon, driven by rage and primal instincts. But the Vârcolac is something else entirely. It does not hunger for blood, it does not serve darkness, it devours light. Unlike Strigoi or Moroi, two other undead beings from Romanian folklore, the Vârcolac is not bound by the grave. The Strigoi is a restless corpse animated by his refusal to die, often feeding on blood or spreading sickness. The Moroi in some tales is the ghost of an unbaptized child or the living offspring of two Strigoi, a fragile spiritual parasite that drains life to survive. The Vârcolac, however, doesn't belong entirely to the world of the living or to the dead. It is an astral predator, a being that exists partly in the physical world and partly in the ethereal one. It can rise from the corpse of a cursed soul, yes, but also from dreams, eclipses, or even malformed prayers. It doesn't attack like beast, it infiltrates, it possesses. It consumes not flesh or spirit, but celestial energy. While the classic werewolf is a man cursed to turn into a wolf-like creature under the full moon, a creature of brute force and animal instinct, the Vârcolac has no such loyalty to nature. It is not bound to a lunar cycle. It doesn't howl at the moon, it swallows him. In fact, Romanian villagers believed the eclipses were caused by the Vârcolac rising into the sky and taking bites out of the sun or moon. And those terrifying moments of darkness, the world felt his presence, a creature that feeds on cosmic light, not for sustenance, but for dominion. This raises a deeper question. Is the Vârcolac undead or elemental? It's neither of them. It's not animated by death, but by imbalance, by spiritual corruption or cosmic disorder. He is not interested in seduction like vampire, nor driven by rage like a werewolf. The Vârcolac has no human emotion, no empathy, no loyalty. It doesn't form covens, it doesn't bite and converts others. It is not a hunter in the forest. It is a shadow in the sky. It isn't a transformation beast. It's a metaphysical anomaly, a myth made of fear, eclipse and spiritual dread. Its form is never consistent, sometimes described as a wolf-headed dragon, other times as a ghostly serpent stretching from the earth to the heavens. He cannot be tamed, he cannot be bargained with, and worst of all, he cannot always be seen. In the endless comparisons between vampires, werewolves and other creatures of the night, the Vârcolac stands apart. It is older, stranger, hungrier, not for body but for the very light that sustains the world. He doesn't want to kill you, he wants to unmake the sky. In the remote valleys of Transylvania, the shadow of the Vârcolac is older than the written word. Long before the myth was named, the people knew it, not as a creature of imagination, but as a force that could steal life from the sky, breath from the lungs, and peace of the soul. Across Romania, from the mountains of Bucovina to the plains of Moldova, the stories may change, but the fear remains the same. In Transylvania, a tale is still whispered in villages, nestled near the Apusen mountains. They speak of a woman whose husband died in a hunting accident. He was buried improperly, without prayers, without a candle, and days later the moon vanished from the night sky. The villagers, terrified by the sudden eclipse, began banging iron pots and saying protective verses. When the light returned, the woman confessed she had seen her husband standing at her window the night before, pale, silent, and not entirely human. People dug the grave. The body, they say, was twisted, one eye open, a smile stretched too wide, and soil clinging to his teeth. They burned the corpses. No one spoke of it again, but the eclipse never returned. In Moldova, where the forests grow thick and time feels slower, old shepherds tell of the umblătorii de cer, the sky walkers. These were said to be spirits of the damned, transformed into Vârcolac, who climbed invisible threads into the heavens and chewed through the sky fabric. One tale from the region of Iași tells a boy who fell ill during a lunar eclipse. He claimed that a giant shadow has entered his room through the chimney and had wrapped around his chest. He couldn't breathe, he couldn't scream. Only when the moon reappeared did his fever break. The villagers believed he had been attacked by a Vârcolac traveling the celestial cord, an invisible path between the earth and the stars. The boy recovered, but never slept in room alone again. In Bucovina, an isolated region with deep Orthodox traditions and lingering pagan roots, the Vârcolac was feared as both a spiritual invader and an omen. Local folklore held that if a child was born under a lunar eclipse, he could grow into a dreamwalker, one capable of leaving their body during sleep and becoming a Vârcolac in the astral world. Another story tells of a quiet boy who spoke little and never cried, even as an infant. His mother claimed she often found him lying on the floor in the morning, far from his cradle, with claw marks in the wood around him. When a series of livestock deaths began to plague to the village, animals found drained of life, with no wounds, the elders blamed the child. A local ritual was performed. They placed ash around his bed and iron scissors beneath his pillow. That night the ash was undisturbed. The killing stopped, but the child's hair turned completely white by the age of 5. Though each region tells its own version, the message is the same. The Vârcolac is not bound by walls, prayers, or reason. It does not knock. It does not speak, and it does not care who believes in it. Its path is the shadow cast by the moon, fleeting silence and cold. These tales weren't told just to frighten. They were warnings, passed down not to entertain, but to protect. To the outsider may seem to be a superstition. To the villagers who live in the narrow places between forest and sky, the Vârcolac is more than a legend. It is a truth too large to name aloud. If the Vârcolac is real, if it truly walks to sky, slips through dreams and consumes light, the question must be asked: can it be stopped? The answer, like the creature itself, is elusive. In Romanian folklore, the Vârcolac isn't a beast to be hunted or slain. It's not bound by physical laws. It doesn't leave footprints in the forest or bleed when struck. It is a creature of the astral realm, more spirit than flesh, more shadow than animal, that makes stopping it complex. And yet, people tried. For centuries, when eclipses darkened the skies, villagers across Romania would act swiftly and loudly. The most common ritual was noise-making, banging pots, clanging bells, shooting guns into the air. They believed the Vârcolac would be driven away by chaos. The sound disrupted its grip on the sun or moon. This wasn't mere panic. It was tradition, a communal act of protection against a force they couldn't see. Others turned to prayer and holy symbols. Churches would ring bells. In some regions, villagers gathered at crossroads or high ground to chant together, calling on divine light to break the Vârcolac hold over the heavens. But what about the Vârcolac that doesn't attack the sky? The one that invades dreams, slips through chimneys, or rises from the grave? That required different defenses. In the home, protection was layered. Garlic was hung above doors and windows. Iron was placed under pillows, especially for children, those most vulnerable to spiritual attack. Salt was scattered across threshold, forming a barrier between the world of the living and the astral. Some families kept an icon of the Archangel Mihail above the bed, believing his sword could sever the Vârcolac's grip and the soul during sleep. If a threat comes from a body, a soul believed to be transforming into a Vârcolac, the measures grew darker. The corpse might be exhumed. If found twisted, bloated, or swinging signs of undead, it will be staked through the heart, decapitated, or burned. In extreme cases, the ashes were scattered at a crossroads, so the spirit could not find its way back. These acts weren't unlikely, but fear has always made people bold. Still, these rituals raise a troubling thought. They don't destroy the Vârcolac, they only push it back, delay it, distract it, which leads to a darker question: can the Vârcolac truly be killed? If it is undead, perhaps it can be purified or exorcised. If it's an elemental, a cosmic force tied to imbalance or shadow, then perhaps it cannot be stopped at all. Maybe the noise and the prayers don't hurt it. Maybe they just remind us that we still have a voice. Some legends suggest that only light, pure, incorrupted light, can force the Vârcolac to retreat. Not fire, not flame, but divine or celestial light. A sunrise, a church candle blessed during a holiday, the light of truth in the heart of the believer. And perhaps that's what the Vârcolac fears most. Not death, but being seen, being known. Because the Vârcolac thrives in the space between night and day, between dreaming and waking, between relief and doubt. So, can it be stopped? Only temporarily, but for those who knows the old stories, who still hung iron on their doors and whispered prayer during eclipses, temporary is enough. Sometimes surviving the night, it is own kind of victory. The Vârcolac may be ancient, born from a time when the line between myth and reality was thin, but it hasn't disappeared. Not really. It has changed, it has adapted, and in some ways it has followed us into the modern world. Today people no longer run into the streets during eclipses to bang pots or fire guns at the sky. Satellites explain the movement of celestial bodies. Science gives us answers. Fear of the Vârcolac is no longer spoken aloud. But maybe it never really left. Maybe it simply shifted form. The Vârcolac can be seen as a manifestation of cosmic anxiety, the fear of losing control over forces far beyond us. Eclipses, nightmares, death, these are not things we can fight with words or reason. And so, the Vârcolac become a symbol, a metaphor for the fear that what we love, the light, the order, the familiar, can vanish in an instant. Not by violence, but by something vast, silent and indifferent. In modern fiction we see echoes of the Vârcolac everywhere, creatures that consume stars, spirits that haunt dreams, beings that twist reality. They may not carry the same name, but their roots run back to the soil, the mountains of Transylvania, the hills of Bukovina, the fields of Moldova. In horror films, the monster is often defeated by understanding, by uncovering its origin, by naming it, by shining a light into its darkness. That's not so different from the Vârcolac legends, because light in every story remains the one true weapon, not fire, no violence, but illumination. Perhaps the most haunting idea of all it is the Vârcolac doesn't kill for hunger or revenge, or even survival. It simply devours light, not out of need, but because he can. And that absence of motive, that cosmic indifference, is far more terrifying than malice. It suggests an universe where some forces exist beyond empathy, morality, or logic. And that is where modern horror lives now. But we shouldn't only see the Vârcolac as a source of fear. It also represents something else, resistance. Despite the terror it inspired, people resisted. They rang bells, they shouted into the night, they protected their children, they buried their dead with care. They told stories like this, not just to pass time but to preserve power. Because as long as the Vârcolac exists in our imagination, we are also remembering the ritual that held it back, the symbols, the prayers, the light. Today the Vârcolac may not stalk the sky above your town. It may not slip through your dreams or steal the moon from your window. It doesn't just warn us about monsters, it reminds us how to face them. But maybe it lives in another form, in the unseen pressures of modern life, in the fears we can't name, in the shadows behind our screens. And just like in the old stories, we still search for light, through truth, through connection, through meaning. The Vârcolac is not just a Romanian legend, it is a mirror, a reminder that even in the darkest moments we are not powerless. We are storytellers, we are light bringers, and even when the sky goes dark, we remember how to fight back.